9 years ago, I was doing something completely different with my life. I was running an online driver's education company. Now that might sound like an oxymoron, but in California where I live, I had convinced the government to allow us to teach teenagers to drive online as well as in the classroom. And the good thing about that was it opened up a whole new business for me. And as an entrepreneur, that was very exciting. The bad news was that there were many competitors trying to launch their online software company as well. And so after working for about 9 months continuously, all week, all weekends, 100-hour weeks, sleeping at the office, my partners and I launched our company, but we were completely exhausted. And so I decided to take a break. And on my break, I decided to go to Argentina. Now, the reason I went back to Argentina is because a few years earlier, my sister and I were on the TV show The Amazing Race. Do you have The Amazing Race here in Taiwan?
惊奇大挑战.
Yeah? And, well, has anyone ever seen The Amazing Race? Raise your hand, just so I know. Yeah? A couple people. Okay. So if you haven't seen it, basically The Amazing Race is a TV show where you compete and you travel around the world, and the winners of the show get $1 million. And after racing around the world for 31 days with my sister Paige, who is my partner, we lost $1 million by 4 minutes. And the worst part is it was my fault. And for all the men in the room, I really epitomize this cliche that we have where we say men will never stop and ask for directions. Because at the end of the show, when we were about to win $1 million, my sister turned to me and said, "Blake, we're about to win. Don't you want to stop and get a map?" And I said, "No, I know exactly where I'm going. Don't worry about it." And then a few minutes later, we were lost, and then we lost $1 million. And the worst thing is, the funniest thing of it all actually was about a month after the show was over, my sister sent me a text message with these random numbers on it. And when I got the text message, I was going to call her and ask her why, but instead I realized that her phone must have pocket dialed me. And then so the next month I get another text message from my sister, and it's another random string of numbers. And so this time I thought I'll go and call her. So I called her and I said, "Paige, what is it with these random numbers?" And she told me the numbers that she had texted me were not random, but that was the interest I owed her on her $500,000. So the reason I tell you this story of The Amazing Race is because on The Amazing Race, I had first gone to Argentina. But on the show, because you're running around so fast, I really didn't get to experience the culture. So when I decided to take some time off from work and go to Argentina, I wanted to really experience the culture. And so I bought a guidebook and I started doing a lot of things that Argentina is well known for. I took some polo lessons. I took some tango lessons, the famous dance of Argentina. And I sampled a lot of the great red wines, the Malbec. And in one of these cafes, I met a few women that were also in Argentina on vacation, but they were there doing volunteer work. And when I asked them what they were doing, they explained to me that they were doing a shoe drive. Now, I didn't know what a shoe drive was, but they explained to me that there were many children living a couple hours outside the city that did not have shoes. Or if they had shoes, they just had a pair of sandals. They didn't have a pair of closed-toe shoes. And the children needed these shoes as part of their school uniform. And so they explained to me they'd been going around to the wealthy families in Buenos Aires collecting shoes, and they were going to take them in the next couple of days to these kids in this village, Los Pilitones. And after I asked them a bunch of questions about their program, they asked me, they could see I was curious, they asked me if I wanted to join them. And I said, sure. So I went to Argentina, I went to this village and in Argentina. And in this village, I saw how excited these kids and their parents were just to receive a single pair of shoes. to me, this was not that big of a deal. I grew up in a family where I never had to worry about shoes or clothes or food, and I hadn't spent a lot of time in countries where this type of poverty existed. But I was amazed at how excited these kids were. It was almost like it was Christmas Day. I mean, everyone was so joyful, and so I got on my hands and knees and started helping with the shoes alongside the women in the nonprofit organization that was sponsoring the day. And we had a wonderful day. And after we were done, we played with the kids, and we played jump rope and soccer and all these things, and then we left. And I left that day just feeling really, really great. And that evening, I was having dinner with a gentleman named Alejo, who was my polo teacher at the time, and I was explaining to him about my day. Now, he was Argentine, and he was very aware of this area that we were that day and the poverty that existed. And as I explained to him about what we had done, he listened very intently, and then he asked me a question. He said, okay, so if you guys gave these children shoes that they need for school, and it's great that you did that, but the kids' feet, they're going to grow. They're going to need another pair of shoes, or they're going to wear out of the shoes if it's their only pair. So who's going to give them their next pair of shoes? And when he asked that question, I recognized that I didn't have the answer, and I had been so caught up in the joy of the day that I hadn't paused to ask that question myself. But that it made me wonder if this charitable organization that was helping these kids get shoes, what their plan was or their solution. And so that evening I kind of went to bed thinking that maybe we didn't do something as good as I had hoped, because I didn't know that there was a way for the shoes to be sustained or for them to get another pair. And I questioned, how that would happen. And so the next morning when I woke up, I was writing in my journal and having a cup of coffee, and I was thinking about how I could help more, because I was clearly connected to the experience that I had. And I started kind of doodling and thinking of some things like a traditional charitable route where you could get friends to donate more shoes, or people could donate money and you could buy shoes. But each of those kind of came to the same conclusion, and that is you're totally dependent as a charity on donations. And, I wanted to find a way that that dependency wouldn't exist. And so my idea was, what if business, instead of charity, was used to help these children get shoes? What if you create a for-profit shoe company where every time you sold a pair of shoes, you would give a pair away? And as I was writing this in my journal and this idea, Alejo came back to get me for breakfast. And I said, look, I have an idea, Alejo. I have an idea to answer your question about how the kids could get another pair of shoes. And I told him, and he got so excited. I mean, his enthusiasm was unbelievably contagious, that by the time we finished having breakfast, he had convinced me to do this. I mean, he said, this is something we have to do. This is a great idea. I'll help you do it. And so next thing I know, I'm calling my partners back at the online driver's ed company saying I need some more time off because I really want to try to make these shoes and create this idea. Now, they weren't really thrilled at that idea because I had already been gone for 3 weeks from work, but they said fine. And Alejo and I got to making some shoes. We found some local shoemakers in Buenos Aires that made these shoes, the Alpargatas. We made some few changes, and we made the first 250 pairs of TOMS. Now, I brought those shoes back, and I had kind of two issues when I got back to the United States. The first issue was I had to get back to work because I had a day job, so I had to get back to work. And the second thing was I really didn't know anything about selling shoes. We got these people to help us make the shoes in Buenos Aires, but I didn't know how much to charge for them, where to sell them, anything about shoes really. But what I did know is that every woman in my life, my mom, my sister, my girlfriends, they all spend a lot of money and a lot of time with shoes. And so I decided to have this dinner party where I invited some of my sister's girlfriends over, and I spread out all these bright color shoes on the table. Now when they got there, they were expecting to eat, but instead of food, there were all these shoes on the table, and so they looked at me and they were quite confused. And I said, okay, but before we're having dinner, I want to show you the shoes and I want to get your thoughts because I'm thinking of selling them here in the United States. I found them in Argentina. Now, I purposely did not tell them about the reason I was doing this. I didn't tell them about the kids in Los Pilotones or this idea of one for one, because I knew that in order for this idea to work, they had to be connected to the shoe itself. They had to think it was cool or comfortable or whatever people looked for in shoes. So I sat there in my living room and watched these women these girls try on these shoes, and I saw a lot of positive feedback. My sister and her friends were saying they're cute. They reminded them of this shoe. They were saying they would wear them with this outfit. All these positive things. So at that point, I pulled out the pictures from my trip of my day in Los Pilotones. And when I brought out the pictures, I explained to them the why of what we were doing. That every time we sold a pair of shoes in Venice, California, where we lived, we would give a pair outside of Buenos Aires, where I encountered these children that needed shoes. And at that moment, these girls got so excited that not only did they all buy a few pairs before dinner, but they told me, what to charge, what stores. One of the girls had some connections with some fashion PR people, and that's when the project, really took root. Now, actually the thing is after this dinner, I still had a lot of work to do because I still didn't have them sold in any stores yet, and I had to go back to work. But I found some time to go visit some of the stores they suggested, and finally I got them in this great store in Los Angeles called American Rag. Now, American Rag was a very trendy store in Los Angeles, and a lot of new brands, were hoping to get into that store. I don't think I appreciated that as much as when we first got in. But after I got the shoes in American Rag, there was a reporter in Los Angeles who is one of the biggest fashion writers named Booth Moore. She happened to be in the store, and she heard the story, and she'd never heard this type of story before. So she got my information and contacted me about TOMS. Now, when Booth first called me, I told her the whole story about Alejo and Argentina and everything. I really had no idea what her writing a story would do for this project. But I told her everything to do and sent her a picture of one of the shoes. And literally 2 weeks later, on the cover of the LA Times calendar section, which is kind of like the life and entertainment section, there were two headlines. The first headline was Da Vinci Code opens $300 million in box office sales, which is the big movie of the time. And the second was TOMS shoes. Now that day, we sold 2,200 pairs of TOMS on our website before 2 o'clock that afternoon. Now the interesting thing is, I only had probably 150 pairs in my apartment. And so that really was the first of many supply chain problems to come. The other interesting thing was I had set the website to send me an email every time we got an order. And so I remember waking up that morning and turning on my BlackBerry, and it was just vibrating uncontrollably. So much that when I put it on the table, it spun around like it was possessed. So 2,200 pairs, what do you do? Well, I did what a lot of entrepreneurs do, and that is I started putting as many ads for interns on Craigslist as possible. And this was a very, very productive thing because I got many people who would want to help us work for the summer. And at that time, I had to go back to Argentina to see if we could make more of these shoes. So I go back to back to Argentina, Buenos Aires, from Los Angeles. I connect with Alejo again. We connect with this guy, Juan Torres, who is making our shoes. And we started putting together more shoemakers, and we got to where we could make, 800 or 900 pairs a week. We got them back to Los Angeles, and then we kept selling the shoes and delivered all the shoes for that summer, or for that first month of the summer. Now, that month was July 2006. In July 2006, when I was back in Los Angeles, a movie came out called The Devil Wears Prada. How many people have seen the movie The Devil Wears Prada? Raise your hand. Okay, oh great, so most people. Okay, so you can imagine how scared I was that when the next phone call I got was from Anna Wintour's office in Vogue magazine. Now, I had just seen what this woman did to Anne Hathaway's character in this movie. I couldn't imagine what she was going to say to me, a guy from Texas who knows very little about fashion. But when Vogue magazine calls, you go, and so I did, and this comes out. Now, Vogue does something very interesting here. It's worth noting, I think. They make it look like I know exactly what I'm doing. This does not look like a guy who is selling shoes out of his apartment with a few interns and making them in people's garages in Argentina. Now, the interesting thing about this, too, is that Vogue, because it's Vogue and everyone reads this, we started getting calls from retailers all over the world, and definitely all the big retailers in the United States. So Nordstrom's and Bloomingdale's and Urban Outfitters and all these places. And all these retailers, they couldn't believe when they called that we couldn't fill their orders because they thought we were like this real company. And oftentimes they would get frustrated that we couldn't do so. I remember many phone calls that were really funny in that regards. But because of this article and many articles that followed, we ended up selling about 10,000 pairs out of our apartment, basically, that summer. Now, after we sold the 10,000 pairs, we knew that was the time to go back and to give them away. And that became the first, what we called shoe drop, and now we call giving trip. And so when it was time to go back and give all these shoes away, we were once again faced with something we had never really done before, and that was, how do we give 10,000 shoes away? So I did what I think a lot of people do when they're in trouble once again. I called my parents. I called my brother and sister, one of our interns, and several of my other friends in Los Angeles, and we all went back to Argentina to give these shoes away. We met Alejo, who was the polo teacher, now turned shoemaker, and his family and his friends, and we got on these big buses and traveled throughout some of the most impoverished areas in the northern part of Argentina to distribute these shoes. Now, we didn't just drop the shoes off. We actually went and hand-placed them on the kids' feet. And I never was prepared for that first experience. I'll never forget it. We were in this kind of cafeteria-like area. It was raining outside. It was kind of dark. And the kids were just going crazy everywhere. And it was very chaotic because many of these kids hadn't had a pair of shoes like this before, so they didn't even know what size they wore. So we were trying to figure this out, and the kids were running around, and I look over in the corner, and there's my mom, and she is sitting there with these boys very calmly, and not only is she preparing to give them their shoes and put them on their feet, but she's taking these wipes out of her purse, and she's cleaning their feet. She's literally washing these feet, and these feet stink. Some of them have blisters. Some of them have, just are not the thing, not pretty feet. And she is treating these kids and their feet as if they're mine or my sisters or my brothers. And when I saw my mom doing that for the very first time, I got very emotional, and I found myself crying. And people were coming up to me asking me if I was okay, and I was trying to explain that I was fine. I was overcome with the emotion because just a few months earlier, this was an idea. This was not even, and now because of this idea, my mom was having this unbelievable experience, and I was as well with my friends and other family members. And I think back now how many times we have ideas that we write in our journal or we maybe say to a friend, but we don't act on. And had it not been for, Alejo's great enthusiasm and us really talking this through and getting excited about it, that idea, that solution to his question of how will these kids continue to get more shoes might have stayed in my journal. And so I think one of the reasons why I was so overcome with emotion that day wasn't just because it was my mom and she was having this touching moment with these kids, was because I recognized the power of a simple idea acted on. And so after I, kind of got myself together, it was funny because when I was crying, I actually scared away all the kids that were with me because they didn't know what to think, why this man was crying as he was giving them these shoes. And so after that, we went on for almost 2 weeks and went to many different places where we distributed shoes and had amazing experiences with all these kids and their families in Argentina. But it wasn't really until almost, I think, the second or third to last day that I had an experience that really had an impact on me, much more than anyone that I had had up until that point. We were leaving this clinic, and we're getting back on the bus, and I had a box carrying these shoes, some of the ones that were left over. And as I was getting ready to get on, this woman came running around the corner, and she was crying, and she had these 3 boys behind her, running behind her, and they were all wearing red pairs of new TOMS that we had just given them. And so this woman was shouting out to me in Spanish, and I didn't understand what she was saying, so I asked, I told her to hold on a moment, and I went and asked Alejo if he would ask her what was going on. And so he did. And he asked her in Spanish, and then when she replied, I saw that she was now smiling. But as I watched Alejo listening to her, I saw that Alejo started to cry. And what I recognized is the reason he was crying was because what she was saying was that she was so joyful, she wasn't sad. But I wasn't prepared for what she was explaining to Alejo, and that was that the 3 boys were her kids, and that for the past year they had been sharing a single pair of shoes. And they had taken this pair of shoes and they would rotate the pair of shoes so that each of her boys could go to school on different days of the week. And the reason she was so happy now was because all of her boys were going to go to school every single day. And when she told me this story through Alejo, I recognized, even more so than ever before, how powerful a single pair of shoes can be. For those of you who have brothers or sisters or kids of your own, can you imagine how bad these kids want to go to school and that a stupid pair of shoes is what's keeping them from it? I mean, that just seems ridiculous. And so when this lady explained how excited she was and how proud she was, it really made me realize that what we were doing was much bigger than I even originally imagined when starting the project. So much that when I went back to Los Angeles, I decided to kind of commit all of my entrepreneurial efforts and energy possible into making TOMS not just a great project, but a really great company, and a company that could help many more people in many ways. So we started hiring people. We hired a gentleman that had worked at Nike in sales. We hired a gentleman that worked at ASICS and other shoe companies to help us with production. And 10,000 pairs became 50,000 pairs. And then, a couple years later, we gave away our millionth pair of shoes. And after 1 million came 10 million pairs of shoes. I mean, over these years, the momentum is growing and growing, and it's still unbelievable to me, the number of shoes we were able to give and still are giving because of this simple one-for-one model. And what we recognized as we started to hit 10 million pairs was that this single shoe that we made we had to create more shoes. So we created other types of shoes so we could give more and more shoes away. And beyond shoes, we recognized that we could help in other ways, in eye care. How could one-for-one help in eye care? Well, every time we sell a pair of sunglasses or frames, we could help someone with their sight, whether it's giving children prescription glasses or it's doing cataract surgeries. So we launched TOMS Eyewear, and we created these frames with these unique colors on the tips of the frames to signify the difference that you've made in someone's life every single time that you put them on. And go back one. Sorry. So as we're growing the business, not only are we helping kids with shoes, but also helping people with eyesight, we had many things to be proud of. But one of the things that started to happen is we started to get some critics, and specifically people who were being critical of us online. And what the main critic, the main topic of the critics was the fact that if TOMS was serious about poverty alleviation, that we couldn't just focus on aid, but we also had to focus on job creation. Because beyond the basic needs and also education, job creation is one of the main things that could have the biggest effect in some of the communities that we work in. Now, I didn't necessarily disagree with the critics, but I found it very difficult from a supply chain standpoint to address this criticism. So a few years ago, we decided to set out to do that in some, at least small way, to see if we could make some of the shoes that we were giving on the continents or in the countries that we were giving in. We started in India and had some success in making shoes and also giving shoes there. Then Kenya, Ethiopia, and then this slide shows last year when we opened our factory in Haiti. Now, as everyone here knows, Haiti suffered from a horrible earthquake a few years ago, and after that, it's been very hard for people to find employment. And as the country is trying to rebuild itself, jobs are very, very important. So putting a factory in Haiti allowed us not only to create jobs, but also raise awareness to other businesses that Haiti truly is open for business. So I bring this up because I think it's really important whenever you're doing anything in life, especially something bold and different, you will have criticism. And some of the criticism can stop you from doing what you're doing, and it can paralyze you almost in fear. And I feel at times that happened to me. But as we started to listen to the critics and integrate their thoughts into our business thinking, I think it's actually made our company stronger. And one of the things that we not only celebrate externally but internally is the fact that almost 40% of the shoes that we make are given in the countries and on the continents that we give them in. And this is something that has all happened in the last 2 or 3 years. So this focus on local jobs and employment opportunities and empowering people through fair trade, that's something that led us on a very unpredictable path, and that is to coffee farmers in Rwanda. And we originally heard about the coffee business and doing direct trade as a way to create better lives and better income for these farmers. And many of the places where we give our shoes, places like Rwanda, Malawi, Ethiopia, Guatemala, Peru, also have great coffee. So we thought, why not use our model to support these local farmers? And when I went to Rwanda, I saw something that I wasn't expected to see, and that is how much water is used in processing coffee. The coffee's quality actually comes from how much of the water is used. And this was very surprising to me because very close by there were these children that didn't have access to clean water. And so when we thought about how can we use our one-for-one model in the space of coffee, we thought, okay, let's sell coffee and then we can give water back to these areas where the coffee comes from. So just last year we launched our TOMS Roasting Co. We have 5 cafes in the United States, 1 in London and 1 in Amsterdam, hopefully more coming to Taiwan in the future. But every time we sell coffee, we also provide investments in clean water systems. So really, as you think about one-for-one and TOMS in the future, there's many different places that we hope to take our model. But one of the biggest areas that I'm focused on, in my life and in my role as the founder of TOMS, is really sharing this idea that giving, while it feels really good, and that's a reason to do it in of itself, it's actually really great for business. And so one of the reasons I'm here today and excited to speak to all of you, which are students and business people here in Taiwan, is to talk about for a moment this idea that giving and business don't need to be mutually exclusive, that they actually can work together and in tandem have more impact. So like I said, when I first met these kids in Argentina and saw they needed shoes, I gave out of my heart. I gave because it was a spontaneous response to seeing how big a difference a single pair of shoes could make in a kid's life. And it was exciting, and it was raw, and I enjoyed every moment of it. And that led me to start TOMS and this idea of one-for-one. And it felt really good. But what I've learned the last 9 years is that it not only felt good when we started and continues to feel good every time I get to go on a giving trip, but it's actually proven to be a really great business strategy. And there's nothing wrong with that. And when businesses embrace this, I think more good can happen as a result of business. So I want to give 3 examples before wrapping up and opening it up for Q&A on how this is the case. The first is that when you incorporate giving into your business or a purpose or a mission, your customers become your greatest marketers. For any new business, one of the biggest investments you have to make is in marketing and advertising. It's in such a cluttered environment, it's harder and harder to get your message out there. But when your customers are so connected to what you're doing, they almost do it for you. I'll never forget the first time I had an experience that taught me this lesson. It's a story I've told many times. But I was actually in the JFK airport in New York City in the United States. And TOMS was only a few months old, and I had been in New York trying to create more accounts and get more sales for our shoes. I had not had a lot of luck. I was going to the airport a little bit discouraged, and I was not wearing TOMS shoes on this particular day. And that's quite unique because I normally am always wearing TOMS, but this day I was just wearing some running shoes, and I was rushing to the airport. And when I got to the airport, I was getting ready to do the check-in on American Airlines and the electronic kiosk. And as I'm getting ready to do the check-in, I look over and there's this woman, probably in her early 30s, wearing a red pair of TOMS. Now at this point, I had never seen a stranger wearing our shoes. I'd seen our interns and my family and friends and people lived close by, but I had never been all the way on the other side of the country and seen a stranger wearing our shoes. So I was really excited. And I wanted to take this opportunity to ask her about her shoes. So I pretended to act like I had nothing to do with TOMS or had any idea. And I said, excuse me, I couldn't help but noticing your shoes, these red shoes, they're so cool. What are they? And she kind of looks at me and her eyes widen. She says, they're TOMS shoes. Now remember, I'm playing it cool, right? So I'm doing the check-in, not paying too much attention to her. And she didn't like that. She wanted more of my attention. So she literally, the stranger, puts her hand on my shoulder and kind of motions to me and looks at me and says, no, you don't understand, she says to me. She goes, this is the most amazing company in the world. When I bought this pair of shoes, they gave a pair to a child in Argentina. And there's this guy, he lives in Los Angeles. I think he lives on a boat. And she literally started telling me my life story, like word for word. And so at this point, I'm getting a little embarrassed, and so I have to tell her who I am, right? And so I said, well, actually, and there's people gathered around now. I mean, it's like a crowd. And I said, actually, ma'am, my name is Blake, and I started TOMS. She pauses. She's like a deer in headlights. I don't know if that expression makes sense in Taiwan, but basically she's paralyzed, and she's looking at me, and she asked me one question. She goes, why did you cut your hair? That was her one question. Now, believe it or not, I learned a lot about business from that question. Because the reason she knew I cut my hair was because she had not only bought a pair of TOMS, but she had watched all the videos of us giving the shoes in Argentina and had seen all the stuff on our website, and she was engaged in it. She wasn't just a consumer, she was a supporter, and she was so engaged in our story. And so the fact that I cut my hair, she recognized that I did because she had been investing in watching these videos and had been following us. Now, I gave her a hug and said thank you, and I got on my flight and she got on hers, and once again I'm writing in my journal and the long flight back to Los Angeles, and I'm thinking of this girl, and I'm thinking, you know what, if even 10% of our customers are as passionate about what we do as she is, then that will take care of itself, because I can't imagine that she stopped a stranger, she thought I was a stranger, in the airport to tell our story. And if she did that, then surely she has, posted about this on Facebook or Instagram, or there wasn't Instagram yet, but there was Twitter, tweeted about it. And maybe she's given TOMS to friends or family members for birthdays or holiday gifts. This one woman maybe had been responsible for, many, many children getting shoes just by how excited she was about what we were doing. And the reason she was excited is because we were authentically making a difference in the world, and not a lot of companies were doing that. So that's how she could get so excited. So giving, for us, in this situation, not only created a great feeling connection that we got to have, but it created this amazing feeling that she had and that she got to share. And I truly believe the reason I'm here today and I'm able to say we've given 38 million pairs of shoes away is because this woman, like many of you, have told our story. And that's the power when you have giving in your business. The second thing that happens is when you incorporate giving or a mission in your business, is you attract amazing people to join you. One of the most difficult things in any business is getting great talent. And not only getting great talent, but then once they're there, keeping them motivated and excited and engaged. And I think that because we have a mission and a purpose beyond just the bottom line, we attract great people, and we have since the very beginning, but we also allow them to have an experience with their work that is much more meaningful than most of their friends and family. TOMS staff members get to go on giving trips every 2 years and on the first anniversary of their employment. And when they come back, they share their stories not only with their family and friends, but with their staff members who are working really hard in either LA or Amsterdam or here in Asia. And that makes such a difference in their life, not just in their work life, but in their personal life, because they get to take that pride they have of working at a job that has meaning, and they get to share that with their friends and their family. And so companies, not all companies can do one for one, and not all companies should do one for one. And not all companies can give a percentage of their profits, but every company, I believe, can incorporate giving into their employees' lives. Whether that's giving them a day off once a year or once a quarter to volunteer locally, or partnering up with a local charity that has a personal meaning. But when you do that, it has such a bigger return on the investment than most companies realize. And so once again, giving can actually be a strong driver of good business. And the third part is that, and this I would say works for business or even for your own personal brand as you think about, if you're a student, thinking about your career and your life ahead of you, is that when you are known as a giving company or a giving person, people want to help you out. They want to see you be successful. It's you could talk about it as karma. You could talk about it in many different words. But what I've experienced in the last 9 years is an unbelievable amount of support. Now, I'm the person up here giving the talk today, but there are hundreds of people that work, over 500 people at TOMS every day, and there's thousands more who either work there or are somewhere connected to TOMS. And they each get the support of their local communities, friends, family, other businesses, because giving is at the core of what we do. And so the thing that is so amazing to me is that by us doing something that we're connected to, it allows us to connect to other people in such an authentic and real way. And so we've had these amazing brands like Ralph Lauren, who created the Polo brand. He designed some TOMS for us in the early days, and he had never done that for any company before. We had a big cell phone company do a commercial about TOMS and my life that helped us reach millions of more people and sell hundreds of thousands of shoes in the early days when we started in the United States. We have amazing partners all over the world who are willing to go barefoot for one day without shoes to raise awareness for the millions of children that don't have a choice. All of this is connected to us because of our giving and our purpose. If we did not have that, none of this would happen. So your customers become your marketers. You attract amazing talent, and you have great partners and support from all people when you incorporate giving and a purpose into your business. So my call to action, or my ask of you, whether you're a student or you own a business or you work at a company, is to ask yourself, how can we each incorporate more giving into our business and to our lives? So thank you very much.
Thank you, Blake. Blake, take a seat, have a sip of water. Take a breath. I'll need you to take a few questions.
Great.
OK. 好，我们再次热烈掌声，我们谢谢 Blake 好吗？谢谢。Great。好，我们带打铁趁热，让大家跟 Blake 聊一聊哈。不过我先简短的来 summarize 一下刚才 Blake 讲的几点。好，第一点是永续。好，他说他当初到阿根廷，他那时候只是在募捐鞋子，要捐给当地的贫童，但他发觉那这样不行啊！我募捐这一次之后，那这些小朋友拿到鞋，万一他们长大脚变大了怎么办？他知道这件事情不能永续的，所以他决定回来之后真正做一个生意，因为当他变成生意，他才可能永续。好，第二个他碰到了执行的问题哈，他回来之后 很幸运的得到一些报道，他公寓里面只有150双，因为 LA Times 报道他一天就有2200双的订单，那一整个夏天有1万双的订单，他怎么办？执行来了，好，所以他很快的又回到阿根廷，跟当地的工厂能够合作，立刻把这些鞋子做出来，在美国也雇佣了很多工读生呢，帮他把这些货安全的送出去哈。那第3点叫做复制，哈，当他想说，如果 One for One 的概念可以在鞋这个方面成功的话，是不是可能延伸到其他领域？所以刚才我们看到他也有眼镜，好，他刚才没有讲的，但是大家可以知道，他也做包包，好，那他也做咖啡，大家也看到了，为什么呢？哦，因为他的眼镜，它可以帮助这些贫穷国家、失明、需要动手术的人，好，他的咖啡。你只要买了他的咖啡，他就捐1个礼拜的水给在贫穷国家没有水用的这些人。好，所以他可以把他 One for One 的模式不断的复制到其他的领域。哈，这个是他之所以成功另外一个重要的原因。哈，第4个重点叫做根源。好，他刚才提到说，当他开始成功之后，他慢慢收到一些批评。批评说什么呢？批评说，如果你真的想要解决世界上贫穷问题的话，不只是把这个鞋子送给他们而已。因为你知道，当把这鞋子送给他们，他们可能走出去依然是没有工作的。所以他体会到，其实最重要的问题，要长期解决贫穷问题，不只能送鞋而已，你必须要给他们教育，必须要给他们工作。所以他开始把他的制造的工厂慢慢的移到这些他捐献的国家。他刚才提到了几个国家，比如说印度、肯亚、伊索比亚以及最近的海地。好，那如今呢，它有60%给出去的鞋子，其实都是在当地所制造的。那在这过程中，他就创造了非常非常多的工作机会，可以解决他想要帮助问题的根源，而不是表面。好，最后呢，布雷跟我们分享了3个非常动人的故事啊，也给我们在座所有，不管你是学生、你是社会企业者，或你只是一个上班族，职场人生的思考。第一点非常简单，好，让你的顾客成为你最好的啦啦队。好，那个机场的故事，大家应该都会心一笑了哈，这个可爱的顾客竟然不知道他就是创办人，于是在他面前把创办人的故事重新讲了一遍。第2个，当你能够有一个美好的理想的时候，你会吸引非常多的人才啊！在座很多长官都知道，其实经营企业最困难的倒不是产品，最困难的都是人才。好，那当你有一个更高层次的目标的时候，你就可以吸引到更好的人才。第3点，也就是他今天最后的结论，我觉得特别适合我们在台湾讲。为什么？他讲的就是我们中国人讲的，叫做善有善报了。他的英文叫做 karma。哈，当你能够把公益跟商业完美的结合在一起，你会发现你身旁的气场的不一样，你会吸引很棒的人。他刚才提到很多的手机公司啦，都开始来帮助他，帮他做广告啦，等等的哈。就自然吸引了很多善缘哈，所以这是一个动人的故事。我们刚才听到了哈，我想要请 Blake 进来，然后看看大家打铁趁热有没有什么问题，能够跟大家互动一下哈。好 ，Blake 从这边好再走进来哈。好待会我们还要请我们台湾的几位社会企业家来跟我们分享一下他们的经验哈。Well, welcome back, Blake. I was just about to say we all love your Vogue story. May I say, devil wears Prada.But angels wear TOMS.
Ah, there you go.
Thank you. Thank you for your speech. 好，恶魔也许穿 Prada， 但我们知道在座的天使都是穿 TOMS shoes 哈。好，我们打铁趁热了，让大家跟 Blake 有几个简单的交流，然后我们再听听我们现场的问题，好不好？好，我注意到其实今天有很多台湾社会企业的前辈哈，比如说我想那个活水的 Ray 在那边哈。然后以利的 Kevin 在那边，谢谢。还有这边有一个右任哈，我想要先请右任来问第一个问题哈，为什么呢？杨右任先生，好，右任可以站起来跟大家互动一下吗？好 ，Blake Mr. Yang will ask the first question。他做的事情叫救鞋救命，哈，救的鞋子。救生命的命哈，在去年右任其实发动了一个大家捐献旧鞋，去帮助肯亚地区小朋友的一个行动。在短短1年之内，右任已经募集了多少鞋子？
目前的话40万双。
40万双，40万双，这就是我们台湾人的力量。好，所以因为右任做的事情跟 Blake 有点像，好，所以Mr. Yang can speak English, so let's have a brief dialogue for now. 好 ，Mr. Yang, go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Blake. Thank you. I was invited here because what I'm doing with my family, with my team, are kind of similar. We're sending shoes to Kenya because my father-in-law is a missionary there, and we noticed there's a lot of feet-related issues, diseases and stuff. So I started this campaign, started sending shoes, Taiwanese people's shoes to Kenya, and then it just picked up in social media. Actually, I've sent Mr. Wang's shoes to Kenya too.
That's great. Fantastic.
Yeah, I delivered them myself. I got to show him the pictures later.
That's great.
So, like you said, one of the challenges is that we start hearing questions, sustainable help, not just that throwing stuff there and then you get out of the country.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear more of the insight because you mentioned you build factories there. What are some of the long-term impact that you have seen from what you do to the countries there? And as far as looking into economic, which is providing jobs, or education, and some of those things where we can follow, in a sense.
Great. Okay. Well,
Let
first
me
off,
translate the question briefly. 哈，这个问题很简单，回到我们刚才讲的第一点，叫做永续哈。那又让他好奇的是说哈，Blake 你做的事情哈，从永续的角度，对于你帮助的这些国家产生了什么效应啊？不管是从经济上，或是从就业上这些角度，我们来听听 Blake 的讲法。Go ahead, Blake.
So first off, congratulations on your project, and that's fantastic. You have experienced the same joy that I talked about in my talk. The first thing is we don't, to be clear, we don't build factories ourselves. We support local factories. So the factory we work with in Kenya is owned, separately than TOMS, and the factory that we helped create in Haiti, even though it didn't exist before, and it only makes TOMS shoes. We support them because we don't want to necessarily own the factory. We think it's important that it's owned locally. In terms of the sustainability of the projects and what we've seen, there's a much higher percentage of children that stay in school when they have the proper uniforms, shoes being a part of that. As you've also seen, there's a lot of foot disease like a hookworm or poroconiosis, different diseases that happen, and by wearing shoes continuously, then those diseases are prevented, which has an effect on people's health, which then leads to education. But I think one of the things that I'm kind of most interested in and kind of most excited about is the dignity that comes from wearing a pair of shoes. What happens to a child's self-esteem is truly probably the most magical part about what we do. Many of these children have never received anything new in their life. They've never opened something out of a box or out of a package. And when I talk to our giving partners, and when I go on giving trips and ask through the translation what the kids or what their families are most excited about, oftentimes what is told is about they feel proud, that they feel that they matter, that they believe in themselves more because someone gave them something like a pair of shoes. So they're able to wear them with a pride and a dignity that stays with them far longer than the shoes themselves. And that also leads to, when you're giving shoes on a regular basis, the practice of wearing shoes will then eventually get, as I see it, translate into children buying shoes as they get older and they can afford it, which then stimulates, whatever city that they're moving into. So there's many different, I think, long-term effects, and I think some of them we're just starting to see, even though we've been doing it for 9 years. But I would say of all of them, beyond the obvious ones for education or for disease prevention, it's the self-worth, the dignity, the self-esteem that comes from someone giving them something that they can put on their feet. So, thank you.
Thank you. Great dialogue. Thank you. 好，我们来掌声谢谢有人问题。Blake, please take a seat. Yeah, we'll take a break now, and we'll invite you back to stage in a minute.
Great.
好，刚才这个对话非常精彩。好，大家都听到了问题，那被回答分4点，也非常非常精彩。好，那第一点当然就是说，这些鞋子好是在当地做的，但不是 TOMS 所拥有的工厂了哈，它都是把这个订单下给这些国家他们自己的工厂。所以就替那些工厂呢创造了很多生意，创造了很多工作机会哈。那第2点的 long term 的效应是从这个公共卫生的角度哈。其实这些贫穷国家小朋友没有鞋穿啊，他们就会得到很多这个寄生虫啊、感染病哈。所以当你 把鞋子给他们，让他们开始穿鞋之后，会解决当地一些公共卫生的问题哈。那第3点，刚才贝维提到，其实也是最重要的一点，也许是我们在台湾的各位朋友没有办法想象的，就是当你有那样的一个鞋盒，这么漂亮的一个鞋，然后你打开来，你发现里面是一双新鞋，是一双新鞋，那所创造的自尊，所创造的骄傲，所创造的那种对生命的喜悦，那些才是对那些孩子来最重要的。好。当我们打开一个东西，发现里面是新的，好，这种让他一辈子对于自我价值的肯定，其实是最重要的哈。那这也是 TOMS 做的事情中最感人的一部分哈。那第4点 ，Blake 提到就是说，当他开始有了第一双新鞋，他开始穿了这双新鞋，他慢慢养成穿鞋的习惯。当他年纪变大，开始有能力自己去买鞋的时候，他就会养成这个习惯。那当他一旦开始消费买鞋，就会促进当地的经济哈。所以有人问了一个非常好的问题，让我们再一次比较深刻的去思考解决问题的根源这一点。那也谢谢 ，Thank you Blake for your great answers。